Welcome to yet another episode of Off the Record show. I'm Aram Melkoumov, the host. Thanks for tuning in. On the show, I'm interviewing well-known CEOs and VCs about their entrepreneurial journeys, how they built their businesses, raising money, hiring rock and pop stars, and how they didn't quit along the way. As a founder, you'll hear practical insights into their world, what they go through, psychology, and the thinking behind it so you can apply it to your company and get better at what you do. The guest that I have today has an undergrad degree in neuropsychology, 2 law degrees, and a U.S. patents in AI and NLP-based technologies. He was an entrepreneur. He was an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist in 2018, and right now is the CEO of a healthcare and life sciences company called ACTO Technologies. His name is Parth Khanna. Parth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aram. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm pretty excited to have you join us today. We're working with you guys on your marketing initiatives. So having you on our show and learning about your business along the way, I think I have a bit of an edge or a head start on everybody who's going to be listening. But to bring it back, first question I wanted to ask you is around natural language processing technologies. You have a patent in it. Can you share with us a bit about what is this technology and how do you apply it at ACTO?
Yeah, Aram, firstly, really awesome that we're partners in crime in each of our businesses and friends off the record. And in that spirit of friendship.
And on the record.
And on the record. In that spirit, really excited to be here and talk about my story at ACTO and all the exciting lessons we've learned along the way that can help other founders, hopefully. Going back to my personal history, the NLP patent, I have a few. I've just been so fascinated by language and the way the technology, the natural language processing technology has evolved over the years. And what's also been interesting is how it has become such a interwoven fabric to our day-to-day life. How Alexa and Siri and all the voice AI assistants have just become, our virtual friends in our day-to-day, so to speak. My first patent in NLP was when I was in law school, actually. I found that I would study very little for my law exam, but I don't know how. I was doing fairly okay in terms of beating the curve, as they call it in law school. And it was interesting. My roommate at the time was the same way. He would skip the lectures with me. We would go to IHOP in Detroit, eat a lot of chocolate chip pancakes, and we're still beating the curve. And we started talking one day and about how we study and how we don't study a lot, really. And it occurred to us that both of us were doing something very similar in our approach to how we were preparing for the exams and studying the curriculum, which was we were drawing a lot of mind maps. And that was very interesting that we were both visual learners, where the little classes that we did attend or little summaries that we read, we would take the information and create relational flow charts and mind maps out of it. And we were really intrigued. So we did what any two tech nerds would do. We mapped out that technology and we wrote our own patents because we were in law school and we wanted to flex our law muscle a little bit. And actually, I took my second year law school tuition money and hired a couple of co-op students to commercialize that technology. It was called Intellify. That project, we didn't hit revenue. We did a lot of R&D. I learned a lot about NLP, and my love and fascination for NLP grew. And while that business didn't become profitable and eventually went defunct, the love for NLP did carry forward. And now with ACTO, we're super thrilled and pumped that we're actually bringing life sciences industry's first voice AI technology to market. Her name is Leica. It's like Alexa for life sciences. But I promised my marketing team I won't be promoting on this podcast, so I'll pause there and pass it back to you, Aram.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Parth, for that background, which is a great segue to my next question, which is you tried something the first time around, you didn't get to that level that you wanted the business to be. But I think with ACTO now, it's at that point where you have been able to successfully get to product market fit. So I want to talk about that a bit more because I know you had your own struggles getting that along the way when you were building the business. Looking back at it now, through this time that you've been building the company, what would you say you learned the most through that journey and process of relating and finding product market fit at ACTO?
Yeah, it's Aram. That's a great question. And with ACTO, we've now hit that scale curve where it's we found the product market fit, and we are we're scaling and growing like crazy, and it's super exciting. And it's interesting how I always say that the growth of a startup happens in step functions where you have a set of problems that you need to solve, you solve for them, you get the traction and you grow, and then you maximize that organizational capacity, and you're busting at the seams, and then you figure out the next set of challenges, and you grow again, and then it really follows a step function. One of the main things that I've learned over the years, firstly as a CEO, from a psycho-emotional standpoint, i.e., inside the CEO's brain, I think humble confidence is super important when you're finding product market fit. I think you need to be humble enough to say, I don't have the answers, I don't know, especially if you're going into a new industry or new vertical where there is room for innovation and disruption. I think you need to be humble enough to listen, yet you need to be confident enough to muster up the conviction to put your solution out there when you get to that solution. So I think in the problem solving part, when you're hearing the problem, try to take the bias out, lean in, understand the pain points that the customers have or your potential customers, and just let your mind just immerse yourself. And when you get to the solution, have the conviction to go out there and push it and learn from it. So it's a dance. It's a dance of humility and boldness. And I think that humble confidence it's a necessary mix there.
And earlier on, what I think you had a couple different attempts in trying to figure out product market fit. It didn't hit, you didn't strike gold from your first shot, right? So yeah. What did you learn the first time, second time, or if it was the third time that you actually hit it? Were there any unique challenges that you came across early on until you hit that kind of sweet spot? And if there were, can you share some with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Aram, so we wandered the desert for a long time, and I don't think we truly ever. I think it's less about striking gold because it's not going to jump at you in such a stark way where the customers aren't, at least in B2B SaaS, from everything I know, even when we have very high traction, you're growing 10x year over year and doubling and tripling after that. It's never that the customers will beat the path to your door. It always is refining and looking for signals in the noise. One of the things that every time I'm mentoring or advising CEOs is, it's not going to be that romanticized, one day you'll wake up and you'll just have this pep in your step and sun will shine on you and every customer you'll talk to is going to cut you a check. It's still going to be arduous. You're still going to have to go through the motions. But what I encourage folks to think about it is the probabilities, and think about data clusters where on aggregate in this market, are we getting more signal than the noise? And that is what product market fit looks like. It's not a clean lock and key. It's more it's diffusive, it's intuitive. You're looking at the data and you're saying, you know what? we're going to build our base camp here, and we're going to turn the base camp into ground floor, foundation, ground floor, second floor, and you build a skyscraper from there on. Yeah, and in our case, we went through, we did different tests, different verticals. We actually started off as a consumer-facing app and then pivoted into SaaS. Then within SaaS, we were a corporate learning platform, then pivoted into a learning platform for the life sciences industry. And from there on, what we found was that it wasn't just sales training or one or two use cases. It really, within life sciences, it really was education in its totality within life sciences across the care continuum that they call is a need for digital disruption. So we kept learning, and it really is layers upon layers. It's almost like 3D printing. So my main guidance to other CEOs is it's not going to be this magic moment, but over an aggregate set of data points, you'll see the magic in its more holistic form.
When you were looking for those signals, I like what you said there, separate out the signals from the noise. Signals can be tied to like North Star metrics or, something like that. What would you recommend? It doesn't have to be for ACTO specifically, but from a generalization perspective, what should a CEO or founder look for? Top 3 things to look for in terms of those signals?
Yeah, I would say in the early days, the first signal should be qualitative, and it starts at home, which is we've heard a bunch of customers out. We kind of have a rough idea of what their pain points are. And this one may be just very idiosyncratic to me because I'm a product-focused CEO. For me, the nucleus of the business is your core values translated into the product. But going back to your question, Aram, if I'm a CEO, the first thing I'm saying is, hey, we've heard the customers, we generally know what their pain points are. Can I, in earnest, look at this product and just swoon over it? Like, can you just love your product? I remember, man, when we pivoted into life sciences, we started hearing the need for data and insights from the customers, and they needed to show business impact of training. That was kind of the hot topic, top of mind issue. And we had very little cash, where we could have either continued building some horizontal, non-life sciences capabilities, or we could build these dashboards for our life sciences customers. And I remember after we did the design sprint and we kind of did the mock-up, these weren't live graphs at that point. They were just, here's our vision in a simulated web page. I couldn't stop thinking about those graphs for the next 3 or 4 days. Like, I literally would close my eyes and I was like, wow, I can't wait till I sell the living hell out of this thing. And that's the first sign, right? Like, can you get yourself excited about what you're solving for? Because once you know generally what the pain points are, that's the first step. And I think that is a necessary step in order for you to evangelize the customers. And that goes to the second qualitative layer, so to speak, which is, are your prospects or customers that you went back to with some sort of a solution, are they swooning over it? One of the things that I would keep an eye out for was how many times is a customer using the word love or like in a demo? I know I need more hobbies, but I would lean in on that. It's like, oh, we love this. It's like, yes. And you see where their eyes pop up when you're giving the demo. And I think those things matter really early on. And then once you have those qualitative factors giving you the conviction, and you're broadening your net, you're talking to more folks, that's when the more CRM metrics come into play. You track it in Excel sheets. Okay, how far along are the pipeline are we moving? What are the close rates? And then finally, the North Star metrics. One of the things my pops always said was, nothing speaks success like success. So if you're hitting your ARR numbers, man, so many sins are forgiven. but yeah, Aram, hopefully
Yeah,
that.
that's great. No, it's a great answer. Yeah, thanks, Parth. Talking about validation and going through your story that you just shared, and I think the one I want to talk about and segue into is around around funding. So through this show, we've spoken to a lot of founders about how they raised, why they raised, how they did it. We found a lot of kind of commonalities and similar, situations that arise, like people recommending, you got to trust your partners, you got to make sure the investors are not just cutting you a paycheck, but they give you something more on top of that. Be careful about shelling out too many board seats, losing voting control. And then don't raise more than you need, right? Don't raise too much because that will hurt you, impact you later. Now, having said all that, I think in your last raise, you raised, I think, 14 million, if I'm not mistaken, approximately. I wanted to ask you, going through that process, especially with the last round that you did, what stood out to you the most in that experience?
Yeah, Aram, great question. Prefacing it, this may be a longer answer. So this is something that I'm super passionate about because it ties into so much of the scale potential of the business. So we've raised now over 20 million US dollars in total. I think we've done now 5 rounds in total. And here's my my overarching philosophy on business building that ties into fundraise as well, on how to fundraise. I think, in my view, building an organization, it's a very human-centric endeavor. You start off as a founder or promoter, to put in legal speak, someone with the initial idea of what should exist in the world that doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And everything from there on, Aram, in my view, is activating other human beings to make that vision into reality. And along the way, you're bringing different people to join you in that journey, and they play different roles. And frankly, investors are no different. Investors just have a view on that same vision, and what they bring to the table is capital. At the same time, my philosophy is it doesn't just need to be capital. There needs to be conviction for the folks leading that march, i.e. the founders or the management team and the management team. And they need to believe in the endpoint, because things will get difficult along the way. You will have to pivot. Am I allowed to drop F-bombs on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you will fuck up, right? And that's where, when investors have that conviction, it just changes the game, because you're not just there as reporting numbers to them, or for checks and balances and for financial returns, but they become as players around the table to help you solve for challenges. I'll give you an example. When we were raising our Series A, we had one of the strategic investors firmed up, and we had a solid understanding with Resolve, who's our now. They led our round, and we were ready to close, and we were poised to close in 2 or 3 weeks. And lo and behold, COVID happened. So we closed in the middle of the pandemic. And when the pandemic happened, pharma stocks, I think it was March 13th, or one of the crazy days where March 11th, pharma stocks fell by 20, 30%. And in the spirit of that human-centric relationship, and just the relationship that we built with Resolve, and the type of folks the Resolve firm is, we sat down and we said, how are we going to do this? Where, yes, the stock market has crashed. We don't know, we're going to enter a period of uncertainty. And I was really moved when our investors said, you know what, we're backing you. Our conviction is on the founders, and our conviction is behind the problem you're solving and the vision that you have. And we still closed a round. And it was a substantial round. It was, I think, $11.5 million US round. and we closed in the middle of the pandemic. It goes back to, again, if you have an authentic relationship, just the way with your team members, right? Where if your best employee left the first time you all hit a road bump, you probably wouldn't have a business. Or if your co-founders did the same thing, you probably wouldn't have a business. I don't think there should be a different standard to early stage investors. In late stage, if you go public, then of course, like you'll have shareholders from across the spectrum. But initially, when you have choice, choose wisely. And I think that also requires more legwork from the CEO, because they need to create the position for the business where there can be choice. And in our case, thanks to the team's effort, we were always beating the plan that we put out to investors, and there was always more money around the table than we needed to take. So we had the ability to choose. But overall, if I can summarize all of that in one word, be human, and build those humanistic relationships just the way you would with your employees and your customers and other stakeholders.
Oh, it's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Parth. When we connected with you before, you had a strong opinion around the journey of a founder, and you talked about some great points just now about, you know, the human elements of it, the conviction, standing behind what it is that you believe in, and getting the investors to believe in more you at the end of the day, and what you're trying to solve for, then, you know, how you're really going to get there. I want to ask you this question around why do you go through the journey of being a founder? Because it's not easy. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
It's super hard, very stressful. So what was your reason for doing everything that you're doing now?
That's a great question, man. I will answer that without making it too philosophical, and hopefully I have to keep my tissue box at bay. So if you see something roll down my cheek, just edit that out from the post tape. For me, very simply, Aram, it came down to, I am on planet Earth for only so many years. How do I best make the use of that time here, while also something that gives me path to financial prosperity for myself and my family? So entrepreneurship kind of brings that together, where I know that what we're doing has an impact. For example, in one of the big pillars of the healthcare system, life sciences is a $1.6 trillion industry that we're disrupting. The end recipients and beneficiaries of that disruption are patients and doctors, and that's super exciting. So it gives you that spark and that joy every day, and you can make that impact. And also knowing that there's 120 families waking up every day, and they have a shot at that prosperity and livelihood as well. That's really exciting, man. When I started this business, I quit my law firm job. I was $250,000 in debt. I was actually sleeping in my car because my parents were in a different city than the law job that I got. And I would go to Good Life Fitness every morning, steam my suit in the sauna room, and pretend like I drove in from another city every morning. But from that to, I always say, myself and my family, we embody the Canadian dream, and that's thanks to entrepreneurship. So that's on a spiritual level, what powers you. And then there's the other aspect of, I'm a competitive individual. I love the scoreboard. I love the ARR number as it goes up. I love when we win, my team wins. It's really awesome. And it kind of, knowing your why, to put in Simon Sinek's words, knowing your why and being clear on your why is going to help you pull through all the undulations that you go through as a founder.
Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know. It's an interesting story. And having spoken to a lot of other founders, it's really fucking hard for everybody trying to do any business, right? Like 90% of the businesses fail in their first year. right? So the stats are not in our favor. So kudos to you for getting this far.
It's been a lot of fun, Aram. And thank
No,
you.
I bet. Moving on to something else I want to discuss is company culture. And I know it's something that's very close and dear to you because you based a lot of your values to it when you were building the company. Culture in general, like everybody tosses the word around. It means different things to different people. But nobody really talks about what it really is sometimes. When you were starting off the company, how did you make culture front facing or one of your key foundational blocks in order to building up the company?
Yeah, that's incredible question, and something that's talked about a lot, but at the same time, not enough, in my opinion. When I first started, I read a few Harvard Business Review articles, and I thought culture and values were these cool things that you talk about. And um, I'll share something very personal. I don't think I've ever shared this with you before. There was one day when I went on Google and I searched, what does a CEO do? I had, I,
I've done
I
that
did
before.
like,
Don't worry.
I was like, well, I get like, my co-founders, like they want me to sell and help them out and do the product. But I was like, I keep hearing like CEO drives a vision and like CEO drives the values. And I'm like, what does a CEO actually do? Good news to any of my board members and investors listening now, I know. And a lot of it now I really do understand, I grasp what it means to drive the vision and what it means to drive the values. And here's what I've learned. I think values are, first of all, I think human beings are, we're creatures of habit. There's things that we do in automated and semi-automated ways without knowing. And the second thing is, we're also creatures of decision making. A lot of what happens in our lives is through decisions that we have to make through the day. And if you combine those two things, is how do you get your team to make the right decision, either consciously or subconsciously when it matters, and here's the key, when no one's looking, where there is no oversight, there's no Zoom meeting, you're just by yourself and a customer asks you something. How do you be? What's your being? If your team member is sharing, maybe they're looking distressed, what do you do in that situation? And there's so many. I mean, I'm just being facetious in these examples, but there's literally thousands of instances every day that your team has to make those decisions. And frankly, you will never be there. So your values and culture is the membrane around the organization. And it happens a lot of it subconsciously as leaders. We're always sending signals. And that's why one of the things that we did as co-founders is we sat down and we also involved some of our leaders in the mix, and we said, hey, we've gone through all these pivots as an organization. We've gone through so much. We asked that same question: why are we doing this? And the answer to what came out of that exercise were our core values. And for our listeners, like ACTO's core values, our values: be human, bend the spoon, comes from the movie Matrix, be the painkiller, and change lives. So that's great. Now that we have those, now the harder part is for us to live those out every day. And yeah, I'll pause here. I can obviously keep going about this topic for days.
No, it's great. So when you set aside the time and you spent time with your co-founders to figure out, okay, how do we define these core values? How did you make sure that what you came up with resonated well with everybody else in the team that was there at the time, but then any new people that joined the company?
Yeah. Aram, I would say, so actually this was our second attempt at coming up with our core values. The first time we came up with core values was very different. I read some articles online. Some of them were HBR articles, and a lot of great insight in there. But the way I executed was, I was like, okay, so we need to define kind of what the company ideals are. And I came up with a 15-point list of, you know, action over inaction. And there's like, I can't even remember them. And there was these 15 points of things that were like kind of like guidelines to the team. It's like, hey, folks, this is how we should be. And the second time we did the exercise, one of our advisors, we involved them too. And he's like, Parth, can you list out your 15 core values? And I think just like right now, I came up with like one or two. And he said, well, this is the problem. If you can't remember them, how do you expect folks to know them and apply them? That's why we kind of distilled all of that down into 4. We made it sticky, right? Be human, change lives, bend the spoon, be the painkiller. Also, it's no accident that it ties into our mission, which is to disrupt life sciences companies and their education. So they're brand aligned, so to speak. They're sticky, and it's something that we can throw around and discuss in our day-to-day conversations where, you know, if you're looking at a candidate and you're like, they have a lot of the bend the spoon mindset. Do they have the painkiller mindset? Or this person's really good at being the painkiller and bending the spoon. Can they be human while they do that? So it's just, I would say one thing that folks can do if they're listening to this is make it so simple and sticky that it becomes a part of your day-to-day discourse at your organization. And that's really where it matters. Otherwise, it's just shelfware.
Yeah. No, I mean, something that you got to always reference in everything that you do on a daily basis, who you hire. I really like the idea is like, can this person bend the spoon, right? Give me an example of how they've done it before or how they will do it. So it's great. I love it. Simple, actionable.
Yes, sir.
Next question I want to ask, Parth, is something you brought up before, which I wanted to unpack, which was, you said, I understand talent at scale. I didn't quite get it what that meant at the time, but I'd love for you to tell me the meaning of that.
Yeah. When I first, as we were going through our first few waves of growth, I thought that one of the ways to scale and grow is just you brute force, like you just things that are working, you do more of them. You create efficiency, you create processes, you get better systems, and there's what I'm learning now is there comes a time where capacity, like you need to build up your organizational capacity and muscle that's commensurate to your goals, and that's where a lot of this will become a game of how you treat your people and how do you attract talent and how do you take care of your people. It's the organization, this whole engine is your team coming together to get to that goal or that North Star, that making that vision into reality in the world. So naturally, just people are just, it really does start with the people. I know it's cliche, people first and whatnot, but it really is. Your human capital is the biggest line item in your P&L. And if it's not, then you're probably running a super efficient organization, and you probably don't need to listen to me at that point. But your human capital is the biggest line item. Yeah. That's where it matters. Talent is everything. Is what one of my biggest lessons has been. Yes, the product is there. It's great. Customers are there. That's great. All of that, the genesis of your organization starts with your folks, your people, your team.
And at what point did you come to realize the significance of that? Was there like a holy shit moment? Like, I can't scale until I've, figure this out, or like I've reached a point that, I can't take this any further until I figure this out. Like, was there any like moment in time that you could relate this to?
Yeah, two things. Where one, we have an amazing team, and initially as founders, you kind of have a lot of tacit knowledge, so you know um, you're being pulled into different conversations, and you have your input. And I've found that over time, my input just became marginal. Like I wasn't adding a lot of value to conversations. And that's where, and frankly, the deliverables and the output would started getting better than I would have. And that's when I realized, oh, this is amazing, where good people that are motivated and super skilled and smart, this is much bigger than me. I know this probably makes me sound like an egomaniac, recovering egomaniac, but I realized that there's power in the team coming together, working amongst each other, and you close bigger deals, you close them faster, and it's a process to basically making the business less founder dependent and decentralizing the business. And we're going through that right now ourselves, and it's a continually evolving process. The second thing, Aram, that we realized was you just need hands, right? You just need more hands and more capacity at some point. So in our case, when we saw that the demand way outstripped what our capacity was, we unlocked all this TAM that we wanted to capture and we could capture. That's where it's been super top of mind for us to bring in amazing talent and set them up for success by empowering them.
Okay, very interesting. And I'm assuming that part of that realization of we have this massive TAM, we need more talent, is when you as a CEO and with your co-founding team decided we might need to go and get outside capital to help us kind of fulfill this potential opportunity. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
And from my conversations with other founders, a lot of people said that once you get on that kind of fundraising bandwagon, you're kind of on it. And you're on it for an acquisition, or whatever it is. It's something that you just have to keep going towards. Is that true?
It is. I mean, look, it does feel like it can feel like a treadmill, but I think the more important question is, is your business right for that, right? And then the second bigger question is to understand why those expectations are in place from your VCs. Mm-hmm. And for that, and it's taken me a while, and I'll share my lesson there, is you almost have to zoom out and look at your business kind of in space and see you're taking capital, translating results in growth, and that's increasing your enterprise value. And those returns are going back to your shareholders, which is also the investors. Mm-hmm. And the reason why a certain set of investors want you to continue having growth rates is their LPs have an expectation on them to drive certain IRR, which is their return rate and the total capital that they need to distribute out after a certain period of time. Right. So once you understand that big picture, it's a choice as a founder that you're making. It's who you're taking a capital from is going to dictate what kind of returns you have to show on that capital, which is going to dictate your strategy, because they are going to be an important player around the table. So that's the big picture. And I encourage CEOs to even, not in super great detail, but at least directionally understand, you can, in your diligence process, in your reverse diligence, you can ask the investors, what kind of returns are your LPs expecting off of you? Because that will dictate how much forward propelling motion that they would want from the business. And there's some investors that will put in external capital and will be okay for you to hit profitability in 5 years or 10 years. Mm-hmm. Maybe because their LPs are expecting profitable businesses. Other folks will just say, hey, grow at all costs. These are two ends of the spectrum that I've seen, and that'll dictate your strategy differently. So I would say it's nuanced and you as a CEO have the choice to, not all external capital is created equal. Some will create a really fast treadmill, and some will create a brisk walk. And it's your choice. And the introspective question is my business ready for a 45-degree angle at 10-speed treadmill, or can I go on one speed? I don't remember being on a treadmill since COVID started, so I'm speculating. This is from far distance memory.
No, it's great, and that's so true. And something that you mentioned there is something that actually hasn't come up on the show, which is when you're doing the reverse due diligence. I think it's super important to ask that question. Your LPs, what kind of return are they investing and how quick? Because can my business sustain this? Am I going to like overstretch myself to try to fulfill these obligations you're setting out for me? Like, do I want to have a life? Right? That's a question you should probably ask yourself. But no, I love it. That's great. A great insight there, Parth. A couple more questions for you. I wanted to ask, you've been around in a while. You've come across a lot of conventional wisdom being thrown at you. People matter, right? You said it, right? That's one. Scaling is hard, is like another one. What are some other ones that you would say are at the top of that list?
Yeah, I would say I'd actually double click on one that you mentioned, which is scaling can be difficult, and it can also be a lot of fun, where if you do the right things. And I think in terms of scaling, the most important thing is to be forward looking as a CEO and see 2 or 3 steps ahead where folks aren't seeing, and having the conviction to make decisions, which is, I'd add one more to the list, which is one of my favorite ones that I've learned. It is decision over precision. It's a lot better to make the call and give your team guidance. And if you need to pivot downstream, you can pivot. It's okay. It'll be fine. But make a call. Just if the teams come to you on a meeting and said, hey, we need guidance on this, if you think you have 50% of the data to make a call, make that call. And if you need more data, be precise in terms of, okay, what data do I need before I make this decision? Put decision reminders on your calendar if you're sitting on a decision, but make the call. Your team, firstly, as a CEO, things that are landing on your desk means folks haven't been able to figure it out. And every day that you sit on a decision, there's 3, 4, 5, 10 people that don't know what to do. So make the call. Decision over precision.
I love that.
It's there are very few decisions that will really kill the business. But what will kill the business is if the team is not focused in their execution, which starts from indecisiveness. So make the call as a CEO, decision over precision.
Awesome. On that same kind of question, playing field, what do you believe that other CEOs would disagree with you on?
That's a great question. What will they disagree with me on is the extent to, I don't think there's, I think the extent to which you can be transparent with your investors and the type of relationship that you can build with them. I fully interwoven from our first angel investor that put the first capital in, all the way to our current investors. I get on calls with them. I give them a full debrief. I don't hold back. I lay it out for them as it occurs in my mind in real time. So if we are having a good quarter, bad quarter, we're running into big problems, I err on the side of over communication. I don't play the dance with the investors. It's like, hey, look, we're building this together. We're on the same journey. Here's what's happening. Here's what I think. And where I don't know the answers, I say, I'm figuring this out. Let me get back to you. And I always try to share a plan and then beat the plan. And I don't, I think some founders would, they put up they have a persona of, hey, I'm a CEO that knows everything. I'm in full control. it doesn't have to be that way. You can be authentic with your investors, just the way you can be authentic with your team and your co-founders. It's all love, man. At the end of the day, we're trying to do something special and meaningful, and we're not perfect, but we'll figure it out. We're all here. We're doing our best.
Awesome. Two kind of like personal questions, which are a bit unusual. One is, if your company were to go bankrupt today, and I'm not saying it will, but who knows, right? What would you do and why?
Great question. If the company was going bankrupt, firstly, not going to let that happen. Let's say we're in a parallel universe and space-time have bent and there's a rip in the space-time fabric and this happened, I would first and foremost, I would have an obligation to our customers, our team members, and the investors. I wouldn't prioritize one over the other. First thing I'd probably do is share with the team because they need to know and they deserve to know. Folks, their livelihood is tied to it. Their mortgages are tied to it. I mean, that's what's most important. And I would also share with them that we'll come up with a plan. We will transition thoughtfully and meaningfully. And I would give them confidence because something like this can be extremely nerve-wracking for folks. And I would, after that, I would share with the investors, the customers, and then we would come up with a plan and try to exceed expectations on the plan. One thing I say to my team is, even when sometimes you lose a customer, always offboard them with the same grace that you onboard them with. So whether it's employees or customers, and that's what we'll try to do is we'll be as graceful in winding down the business that we would be in building up the business. Aside from that, I'd probably sleep for like 12 to 14 hours, man, because I'm thinking that would be pretty heavy. And I'll get back up and think about what else do I need to do while I'm on planet Earth to make a difference.
Nice. Last question, and I wanted to explore that a bit. You said nerve-wracking. What is it that makes you nervous?
Good question. Podcasts?
Well, you're doing great. Don't worry.
What makes me nervous? And a lot of things. I think as human beings, there's a fear of unknown. Every time the business goes through that inflection point, sometimes I'm hard on myself. I'm like, hey, what's going to happen? We're making, for example, right now we're doing a lot of hires, like we're scaling like crazy. And I always think like, okay, how are we going to keep that membrane intact? It does give you anxiety. At the same time, the good thing about nervousness is there's an antidote to it, which is action. When you're nervous and you keep yourself moving and in action, it cuts through the nervousness and gives you confidence. And courage is a muscle that you build over time. So for me at this point, when I get nervous, I get moving. It's as simple as that.
The driver.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Parth, amazing. I can't thank you enough. So much great insights and points that I'm sure all of our listeners are going to really, really appreciate and hopefully apply. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Aram. And actually, I had to your last question, I had actually prepared a quote that I wanted to share with you, and maybe that'll be a good place to end our conversation.
Yeah.
So this is one of the quotes that every time we've gone through this inflection point, and I have felt nervous, and I've mustered up the courage to get on the other side, this quote just gushes back into my mind. So I'll share that with you. Here it is. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson, by the way. And the quote is, "When a resolute young fellow steps up to the great bully, the world, and takes him boldly by the beard, he's often surprised to find it come off in his hand, and that it was only tied to scare away the timid adventurers." And yeah, so, once you get through it, you realize, you know what, it wasn't that bad, and we'll just be fine.
I love that quote. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Parth, for
Aram.
sharing
This
that.
was amazing. I enjoyed it so much.
And thank you for all of our dear listeners for tuning in, supporting the show, following us on LinkedIn. We don't take it for granted, and we really appreciate everything that you give us. So this was another Off the Record episode with an awesome founder. Thank you again, Parth. And we'll be back here again soon, so stay tuned.